The cleansing of a leper, a story of healing and hope. Jesus had just descended from the mountain after delivering one of his most profound teachings, the Sermon on the Mount. Crowds thronged around him, hanging on every word he spoke, for he spoke with authority and wisdom that transcended human understanding. Amidst the pressing crowd, one figure stood out, a man whose very presence caused others to recoil in fear and disgust. This man was a leper. Leprosy in the time of Jesus was a devastating condition. It was not only a physical ailment, but also a social and spiritual curse. The disease, now identified as Hansen's disease, caused disfigurement, nerve damage, and painful sores. But in ancient times, the suffering of lepers went far beyond the physical. Leprosy rendered a person ceremonially unclean according to the Mosaic Law. Lepers were banished from their communities, forced to live in isolation, and required to cry out, "Unclean! Unclean!" to warn others of their presence. They were cut off from family, friends, and the worship of God in the temple, a life of utter despair and rejection. The leper who approached Jesus had likely endured years, if not decades, of this torment. His body bore the marks of disease, but his soul carried an even heavier burden, the weight of shame, loneliness, and hopelessness. Yet, when he heard of Jesus, a spark of hope ignited within him. Could this man, this teacher, this healer, truly be the Messiah? Could he be the one to restore not just his body, but his very life? As the leper approached, the crowd parted in alarm. Mothers clutched their children, men turned their faces away, and a murmur of disdain rippled through the throng. But the leper was undeterred. He fell to his knees before Jesus, his posture one of complete humility and desperation. "Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean," he said, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and faith. He did not demand healing, but appealed to Jesus' mercy, acknowledging his power and authority. The leper's words revealed a deep understanding of his condition. He did not merely ask to be healed. He asked to be made clean, a restoration not only of his health, but of his place in the community and his ability to worship God. The crowd watched in stunned silence. What would Jesus do? To touch a leper was unthinkable. It was a violation of the law and risked both physical contamination and ritual impurity. But Jesus, moved with compassion, did the unthinkable. He stretched out his hand and touched the man. In that moment, heaven met earth. The touch of Jesus broke through the barriers of disease, rejection, and fear. It was not the leper's uncleanness that defiled Jesus. Rather, Jesus' holiness purified the leper. "I am willing," Jesus said. "Be clean." Immediately, the man was healed. His skin, once marred by sores and disfigurement, became smooth and whole. The transformation was instantaneous and complete, a testament to the power and authority of Jesus. But more than that, it was an act of love that restored the man's dignity and humanity. Jesus then gave the man specific instructions. "See that you don't tell anyone," he said, "but go, show yourself to the priest, and offer the gift Moses commanded as a testimony to them." This command was significant for several reasons. According to Levitical law, a person cleansed of leprosy had to be examined by a priest and offer sacrifices to be officially declared clean and reintegrated into society. Leviticus 14. By sending the man to the priest, Jesus upheld the law and provided a testimony to the religious leaders of his divine authority. However, the man, overcome with joy and gratitude, could not keep silent. He went out and began to proclaim what had happened, spreading the news far and wide. As a result, Jesus could no longer enter towns openly, but had to stay in secluded places. Even so, people came to him from everywhere, drawn by the hope and healing he offered. Jesus' compassion, the story of the leper, highlights the boundless compassion of Jesus. In a society that marginalized and ostracized the unclean, Jesus reached out in love. He did not merely heal the man, he touched him. This act of physical contact was profoundly significant. For the leper, it was likely the first human touch he had felt in years. Jesus' touch conveyed not only healing but also acceptance and love. Faith in action, the leper's approach to Jesus, is a powerful example of faith. Despite the stigma and the risk of rejection, he came to Jesus with humility and confidence in his power. His words, "If you are willing, you can make me clean," reflected deep trust in Jesus' authority and mercy. Faith often requires stepping out in boldness, even when circumstances seem insurmountable. The holiness of Jesus in the Old Testament, contact with something unclean would render a person unclean. But with Jesus, the opposite occurs. His holiness is so powerful that it overcomes impurity. This truth foreshadows the ultimate purpose of Jesus' mission, to cleanse humanity from the stain of sin and restore us to a right relationship with God. A testimony to the priests: by sending the healed man to the priest, Jesus demonstrated his respect for the law and provided a testimony to the religious authorities. The priests, who were the gatekeepers of the community and temple, would witness firsthand the miraculous power of Jesus. This act also reinforced that Jesus did not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. The cost of ministry, the leper's proclamation of his healing, though well-intentioned, complicated Jesus' ministry. As news of the miracle spread, Jesus faced increasing crowds and opposition. This highlights the tension between Jesus' desire to minister to individuals and the growing demands of his public mission. The story of Jesus cleansing the leper is not just a historical account. It carries profound spiritual truths for us today. Jesus is willing to cleanse us. Just as the leper approached Jesus with his physical ailment, we can come to him with our spiritual brokenness. No sin is too great, no shame too deep for his healing touch. We are called to extend compassion. Jesus' willingness to touch the untouchable challenges us to break down barriers of prejudice and fear. Who are the lepers in our society? Those marginalized, overlooked, or rejected. As followers of Christ, we are called to reach out with love and compassion. Faith requires action. The leper's boldness in approaching Jesus reminds us that faith often requires stepping out of our comfort zones. Whether it's seeking God in prayer, serving others, or sharing the gospel, faith is active, not passive. Our testimony matters. Like the healed leper, we are called to share the good news of what Jesus has done in our lives. Our stories of transformation can inspire faith and hope in others. This miraculous account is a testament to the love, power, and purpose of Jesus' ministry. It reminds us that no one is beyond the reach of his grace, and that through him, we are restored to wholeness, body, soul, and spirit.